be it Kashmiri half orphans, children who don't know either their father are alive or not. So these terminologies, these things we'll be hearing from today's panelists as well. And when we talk about the impact on women and children in a conflict, we have to understand that it is not just physical or mental or just the abuse or torture, psychological as well. Um, we in a conflict zone, I am from Indian occupied Kashmir as well, and I know and I can tell you of my own stories that how we, being a woman and being a girl, being a child, we live in conflict zones. So with first we'll hear about what our respected panelists will have to say, and I'll keep on adding to whatever they'll mention. First, let us see what our first panelist in her introduction, Mary Scully. She is a political activist and writer from US since 1966, and she is active participant of anti-war movement, civil rights movement, women's rights movement, and I can say that with authority that she is active supporter of Kashmir freedom struggle as well. So I'll like to invite Mary Scully. Floors on yours. And just a reminder for all the participants here. No photography is allowed. Only a designated person is allowed to take pictures, and he'll take pictures, and no other person can take the pictures. Just 10 minutes per speaker. 10 minutes per speaker. And you'll have a countdown as well for the speakers. 10 minutes are allotted. So, Mary Scully, the floor is all yours.
Not audible.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Very loud and clear.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here. I thought it might be useful to review the different forms that sexual violence as a weapon of war, what the different forms that it takes, because it's very often thought of as a minor thing or some sort of secondary thing to the greater war, occupation, and genocide, but it actually plays a very central role. And we can see that we have seen that played out in Kashmir, and we certainly see it being played out in the Gaza genocide. One of the ways that it's played out in war, and I know this from all of the US wars, including going back to Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, is that it creates an entire new industry of prostitution as an adjunct to the military. And what it does in these often very religious societies, I'm sorry. What it does in these it totally disrupts the culture and the society, and produces forces young women into sexual slavery, as the Japanese military did in World War II with thousands of comfort women. But also in the United States had military bases, air bases in the Philippines. They've just reopened them. They were forced to close them because of public opposition. But in the Vietnam War, there was an entire industry of prostitution that grew up around the bases that were administered by the US military. That is, they didn't want active duty soldiers to come down with sexually transmitted diseases, so they monitored the medical treatments for women. So that is one aspect that was true in Afghanistan and Iraq, and is that if they couldn't create the industry, they often would fly soldiers out of the country for rest and rehabilitation so they could engage in prostitution in other countries. And I know this quite personally because I have 3 brothers who served in the Vietnam War. who were introduced to women for sale for the first time. It's a very corrupting influence for young men. That's one way that violence, sexual violence against women manifests. And that is also true, by the way, in Haiti today, which is should always be acknowledged as a colony of the United States of America. And it's treated in the same brutal way that India treats Kashmir or Israel treats Palestine. There are also Guatemala, the Mayan women of Guatemala, who during the the last part of the 20th century, were victims of not only a genocide against the Mayan people by the Guatemalan military, allied with the United States military, but there were thousands and thousands of women and girls who were mass raped. And I'm going to get to what those women did, because the Mayan women have played a particular role, along with Egyptian women and Kashmiri women and Palestinians, in educating us about the character of sexual violence in a conflict zone. We know about the women, the Rohingya women in Myanmar, in the genocidal assaults of not just 2017, but earlier assaults in 2012 and earlier. There were thousands of women who were not only slaughtered, but were raped, seriously raped. And they came from a quite religious, conservative society. And I don't believe that there has been a great deal written about them because of the trauma and the modesty involved, except by a man who I felt was not as sensitive as one needed to be in addressing the question with women. Kashmiri women, well, let me first mention the Egyptian Arab Spring. The military and its undercover operatives began a rape campaign of women who were involved in the Egyptian Arab Spring. So the women who showed up in Tahrir Square for the daily protests were subjected to assault and rape. And the Egyptian women's organizations were the ones who did the most to educate about who was behind those, because of course the United States and Egyptian junta were using those rapes to discredit the Egyptian Arab Spring. But the Egyptian women's feminist groups showed that it was these undercover operatives, and they began to create defense squads for the women, including men, that would come to the aid of the women and circle them and chase off the assaulters. Kashmiri women, it's sort of as complicated in its way and in its manifestations as it is in Palestine. I don't have to tell any of you that, but it involves not only mass rapes like Khun and Peshpora, but also the assault on Asifa, the young girl, the young tribal girl, by Hindu thugs, who was gang raped and then murdered. And that young girl has not received justice. As soon as the coast was clear, the air was clear, and they thought they could get away with it, most of those men received impunity in the courts, and she has not received justice for this unspeakable crime against her. But also, as the moderator pointed out, sexual violence doesn't just include women and girls, it also includes boys as a way to demoralize them, so that we know that young boys picked up in Kashmir and sent to prisons under these illegal colonial laws. Those young boys are often suffering a sexual humiliation and punishment in jail, sexual torture. And so the sexual thing, that involves the welfare of children. which is always, the welfare of children is always a central concern of women. So it has many manifestations in Kashmir. In Palestine, we're seeing it played out in real time on social media. They create Israel in its unspeakable criminality, did a gaslighting, and instead of acknowledging the sexual violence against women, children, and men and boys in Palestine, accused Hamas fighters of a sexual crime on October 7th. The first to expose that lie were Palestinian feminists, who clearly, they've not been properly credited, but the first time I saw an expose of that lie was by Palestinian feminists who did a very brilliant expose. They're not, as I say, being accredited with that. But there was, of course, in a sort of kamikaze operation, like the Hamas thing, there was no time for people to, Hamas commandos, to gang rape, to involve in gang rape, to involve in cutting out the fetuses of pregnant women and raping the fetuses and sexual mutilation, cutting off women. There was no time for that kind of operation, and there isn't a shred of evidence. It has been very cogently refuted by any number of reputable organizations, of which I do not include the woman from the UN who went there as a guppy to the Israeli government. She came back without a single shred of evidence. There is no evidence. And the accusers are completely, Zaka, the Israeli organization, is itself been discredited many times for sexual violence by its leader. He was prosecuted, committed suicide because of the shame. But they were accused by Haaretz of mishandling the bodies at the site of October 7th, not properly getting forensics evidence, and trying to use the whole entire thing as a fundraising operation.
Sorry, I have to interrupt here. We'll come to you if there are any questions regarding your presentation. We'll have to move to another
Okay,
speaker.
I'm sorry.
We'll have to move.
Can I just finish one sentence? I'm sorry. Can I just say one?
Yeah.
The entire point of this is to keep women out of political life. And I'm sorry I spoke too long. Maybe in the discussion I can finish up with the fight back with what Mayan women did in order to fight back, and Palestinian women and Kashmiri women. Because Kashmiri women, Mayan women, and Egyptian women have done the most to educate us about the character of sexual violence in a conflict zone. I'm sorry, that's
no problem. We'll come back to you if there are any questions regarding your presentation. And before moving to our next speaker, as Mary Scully rightly said that whatever is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir, the use of rape by occupational forces in Kashmir is not an isolated case. It is well orchestrated and manufactured part of overall plan to break the spirit and will of Kashmiri people. Moving to our next speaker, we have Dr. Shazia Anwar Chima. She is a PhD scholar in the Department of Semiotics and Philosophy of Communication at Charles University Prague, and she regularly writes for Express Tribune, Pakistan Observer, Pakistan Today. The introduction was very large, and I had to cut it out, but to tell my audience, you have so many golden things in your CV. We'll reveal that later to our audience, but over to you, Dr. Shazia.
Thank you very much for allowing me to talk and giving me this auspicious opportunity. As we are discussing today human rights in reference to women and children, and particularly women and children being in a conflict zone, in a war-like situation. In the past,
Mute. Mary, will you mute yourself? You
Yeah,
spoke you.
thank you.
so I was telling you that in the past, as we all know, in any armed conflict or a war-like situation, the first casualty of the conflict were supposed to be the armed or military personnel themselves. But now we are experiencing a paradigm shift. In any armed conflict, the first victim is civilian, and among the civilians, the first and the foremost victims are women and children. So, in the light of ongoing Gaza genocide, which was not started from after 7th of October, it's like the third generation which is experiencing this. And we can easily relate this situation with the Kashmiris. Their third generation is also living under unlawful occupation of Indian military. So I would like to direct your attention toward the psychological and cognitive traumas, especially for our women and the children living in a conflict zone. When we talk about women, we always tend to forget a woman being in a conflict zone is a mother and has a motherhood phenomena, and that multiply its psychological and cognitive load. As a mother, she has to save and safeguard her kids, her family. She has to maintain that shelter, no matter how. She has to provide food. She has to take care of the sick. She has to mourn the dead. She has to wait for the missing. She has to look for the imprisoned. So these all things multiply the cognitive load a woman is facing in a conflict. When we talk about Kashmiri women, it's the most neglected and most brutal conflict ongoing since 70 years, more than 70 years, and it's the third generation of Kashmiris, indigenous Kashmiris, who are facing this purge and this unlawful Indian occupation. So, as a Kashmiri woman, a woman, there are different phenomena. There are different aspects we must discuss. First, there is a huge number of half widows, as you have mentioned in your introduction, and the widows and the young widows who are living in Kashmir in that cultural phenomena, and they are facing economic disparity, because in Kashmiri society and in most of the South Asian societies, men is the provider of the family. So if that provider is missing or dead or imprisoned, in the case of widow and a half widow, the women is not allowed to culturally go out, scenario A, and B, if she somehow initiated to go out and work, there are no work and employment opportunities. And there is 24/7 curfew in Kashmir, as many people know, that there is the heavy military presence has made the freedom of movement simply impossible. So the widows, they are facing this economic disparity. They are surviving on day-to-day basis on unimaginable level. We cannot imagine those who are just witnessing their misery, as we all witnessing Gaza today, and we cannot imagine what they are going through, and we cannot imagine what Kashmiri women and children are going through. Another thing which must be considered for a Kashmiri woman is their post and prenatal care. A Kashmiri woman has no medical care during the pregnancy, after giving the birth. She is giving birth in inhuman conditions, unhygienic conditions. There is no medical care for that situation. So this also needs to be to be looked into, that how these women are living, and now their third generation is experiencing the same scenario what their grandparents and grandmothers are facing. Kashmiri women are looking for their missing kids, their missing sons, their missing husbands, and it's a long agony which has no end. Um, they don't know whether the missing sons or husbands or brothers, they are alive or dead. They don't know how to get help. They don't know how to find an advocate. They don't know how to go for what could be the proper channel, and how they can pursue to pursue for this the legality of this operation, to find their missing ones. And in few cases, those missings are like more than 20 years, 25 years, and the Kashmiri women, they are still waiting whether or not they are dead, they are alive. And other issue is that Kashmiri women are women are waiting for the dead bodies. They are waiting for they are not allowed to bury their loved ones. That's an other inhuman situation. Somebody who is in Indian occupied Kashmir is in jail and get killed or died in jail. The dead bodies are not delivered to the family, and they are never given a proper burial. So these are the things we discuss, the issues like on a broader terms, but we never discuss how the affected party is living on day-to-day basis, how their routine life is going on, how a conflict which is prolonging more than 70 years and having zero attention from the power corridors, from the corridors which we can ask for help or look for help, how they are surviving, and how they are going through their daily life, their day-to-day life. That their children, they can't go to school. There is almost all day, 7 days a week, there is curfew, so most of the time schools are closed, so their kids don't go to school. The women can go to work due to either the cultural issues or having no employment, or they cannot move because of the curfew. There is no internet in Kashmir, so there cannot be the possibility of online education. So if living in a conflict area, a child undergo through many traumas, and those traumas can definitely give room to few other things such as addiction and drug abuse. And in particular in Kashmir's case, where drug addiction is being facilitated by the occupant, it is now a very prevalent phenomena that Kashmiri kids are using drugs, and those drugs are being provided to them via some sort of facilitation, and that can be as cynical as it sounds. So now these kids who have apparently no future, their past and their childhood has repleted with the memory of a conflict. They are so familiar with the heavy military presence in the streets. They do not have playgrounds. They cannot go out. They see their mothers all the time with the traumatized face, feeling like whether or not today will be the last day for the kid or the husband or the any family member of the day, and what will next day will going to bring for them. Exactly, so those kids are
Dr. Shazia, thank you very much. And you reminded me of Amina Jan, a 30-year-old pregnant Kashmiri woman who had to walk 10 kilometers to go to the hospital, and many such women who had to give birth and give stillbirth on the road because they were not allowed by Indian occupational forces to visit, to go to their routine checkup while they were pregnant during the protest, during the curfew. And this is, and exactly you said the right thing, that we have to see the day-to-day life of Kashmiris. We have to see the routine of Kashmiris, because we know once even we have to go to school or colleges, we have to go through those checkpoints every time and listen to those lewd remarks and listen to those things that every day we have in other world community, they take it for granted, but we have to go through those checkpoints. We'll come back to you if there are any questions regarding your presentation. We'll move to our next speaker, Dr. Asma Shakir Khwaja. She is the Executive Director of Center for International Strategic Studies, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. She is author of highly acclaimed book, Shaking Hands with Clenched Fist, The Grand Trunk Road to Confidence Building Between Pakistan and India. She is an Associate Professor and former Head of Department of Strategic Studies at National Defense University. I had to cut the introduction, but just to remind you, we met at Queen's Mary University where we both represented Kashmir. So thank you, Dr. Asma, for joining us. Floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for the generous introduction. This topic for whom I've been invited to speak on, that is very, very close to my heart. One, because it is about Kashmir and Kashmiri women, and I myself, I am a Kashmiri woman. My ancestors are from in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Our family is survivor of Jammu genocide. And let me correct that this is not the third generation of Kashmiris which is facing the trauma of conflict, but the fourth generation. So that is why we call Kashmir conflict a protracted social conflict, because it involves multiple generations which are living under the shadows of gun, violence, fear, and extreme human rights violations by colonial occupant India. So let me start. And I work on gender and conflict. So that is why it is indeed an enlightening experience for me to speak at this esteemed forum and briefly share my thoughts on the subject. I would try not to be repetitive as well. So I would start my talk with the statement that men make war, women live with the consequences of war. But in case of Kashmir, it is the colonial occupant which is making war in order to satisfy its regional power ambitions, and the Kashmiri women are giving the price. And why? Because women, number one, as per international law, women are considered as a vulnerable community, as a vulnerable gender in a war-like situation. Number two, women are not only victims of the conflict, but they are the survivors as well. And that is why, being survivor, while dealing with their grief of losing their loved ones, women also have to ensure the survival of their kids and families in the absence of male members of the family. So this is really important that we all understand. And number two, that conflict influences men and women differently. The trauma of conflicts suffers or affects men and women differently, but in any conflict process or peace building process, the effects on women have been ignored. Third thing is, when we see the Kashmir conflict, that is, I'm so glad that today there are several women who are discussing Kashmir conflict and the impact of women. But usually when we see any peace process, peace negotiations, conflict resolution processes, even the face of conflict, unfortunately, you would not see Kashmiri women on the table, on the decision-making table, on the peace building processes, sharing what they need and how they want to resolve, or how they would like to go for the resolution of Kashmir conflict. Here, I would like to quote from a famous book by Nobel laureate. The book is Unwomanly Faces of War, and that book focuses on humanizing the history. When we say Kashmiri women, somehow we forget that it is not something which is static or which is inhuman. That is a human. We are talking about Asifa. We are talking about several 100,000 women who are used as only as a statement, and we are unable to humanize the history of Kashmir conflict, of the history of those unsung heroes, which are women and they and whatever women talk about, the thought of constantly present in them. War actually war kills the feminine side of a woman and brings the masculine side at the forefront in any woman, and that we need to understand that how war-like situation affects. And when it is about the fourth generation living in a war-like situation, in a extremely violent conflict where unfortunately the colonial occupant India is using terrorism as a state-sponsored policy to inflict the maximum threat and fear among Kashmiri population, that is the situation. So uh, although it is difficult, I would like to say that it is difficult for women to kill, but it is far more difficult to live with the loved ones killed in war. And this is what exactly Kashmiri women are doing, bearing their loss, adopting their new roles, surviving the conflict, and with all the related pains and traumas. So Kashmiri women are facing the Kashmir conflict in its worst form. There is ICRC in an article about women and war starts with the phrase that this is really important that we understand the contributions of women in ensuring still a stability in a highly unstable and volatile conflict situation. And Kashmir conflict is not a different story. It has been here the women have been victimized since the inception of history. Let me say it is not a new phenomena. This phenomena is as old as the phenomena of war. That women are used as war trophies. They are used to kill the enemy's will to resist. The women, the rape of women, dishonoring women has been used to dishonor a community and a nation. And that is what exactly Kashmiri women, whether it was the mass rapes in 1947 by the Hindu fanatics, and after that, the mass rapes and all those humiliating incidents where victim is not humiliated, where victim is humiliated, but perpetrators are fleeing free. Why? Because these are not colonial rules, but these rules are modified, amended, and tailor-made by the Indian colonial occupants, which provide extreme immunity to Indian soldiers against any inhuman crime in Kashmir region, whether it is war crime or it is crime against humanity. So women, we were talking about the disappeared people. Almost 10,000 people have been disappeared. But here it is pertinent to mention the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, which ensures the protection, participation, prevention, and inclusion of women, relief and recovery of women in any not only conflict situation but in the peace societies as well. And India has not applied or implemented UNSCR 1325 yet, only because it protects women. So this shows that how the chauvinist and masculine idea of security has hijacked the mindset of Indian leadership and Indian political system. So then women participation, here it is also mentioned that as per UNSCR 1325, women participation increases the probability of peace agreement lasting at least 2 years by 20%, and by 35% the probability of peace agreement lasting for 15 years. And that is why all peace initiatives between Pakistan, India and Kashmiris were always unsuccessful, because of women were not part of it. I wanted to talk about that how international law, Article 27 says that women shall be especially protected against any attack on their honor, in particular against rape, enforced prostitution, or any form of indecent assault. But when we see the policy of India of Indian government and policy of Indian government under Modi regime, they only focus on threat of excessive, out of proportion punishment to silent Kashmiri voices, whether these are women or these are men. This also reminds me the brave Kashmiri women Asiya Andarabi, Parveen Ahangar, and Zamurda Begum, who in their limited capacity, Shamim Shal, tried to uphold the stories of massacres, atrocities, humiliation by Indian occupant forces. I don't need to mention the mass rape cases, but they are a constant feature of in Kashmir, unfortunately. But here it is very important to mention few statistics because Article 5 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that no one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. But the reality in Kashmir is that 22,968 women are widowed. Only in 11,259 women ganged, raped, and molested by Indian occupant forces. 2,500 women are half widows and wives. These are wives of missing persons. And total of 9,765 women below and above the age of 18 are missing since 2019. 9,765 women have not been registered in at any forum, and no one can trace that where they have gone. And definitely they've been kidnapped and sent to prostitution or used for by Indian forces for their
Thank
malified
you.
intention. The mental health of women, Kashmiri women, is also a very important topic. And
We are running out of
yeah,
time.
just give me 2 minutes. Just give me, I request. 50% women are suffering from probable depression. 36% Kashmiri women are suffering from anxiety and disorder. And 22% women are with post-traumatic stress disorder. This is how conflict is affecting those poor women. But most importantly, I would end my presentation here that the infertility issue, the threat of violence, the use of violence, the uncertainty, the lack of medical facilities, the conflict trauma, the stress, depression has caused unbelievable infertility rate in Indian occupied Kashmir. And this data which I'm sharing is from the India's National Family Health Survey, which says that the fertility rate in Kashmir, in Indian occupied Kashmir, has dropped from 2 to 1.4, much lower than the national average, Indian national average of 2 since 2015 and 16. And not only this, the infertility has also increased to 17.5%. And the draconian laws by Indian armed forces and government have added into the infertility. And you can, being a woman, you can well imagine that how that situation is also negatively affecting the mental health of Kashmiri women. Due to the shortage of time, I couldn't talk about the children, but children are no different. And one last thing, that children are victim of pellet guns. Due to this blind eye pandemic was launched by Indian armed forces against the Kashmiri children. So this is how they are. And
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
thank
Asma.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Asma.
Thank you.
And
Sorry for taking more time. Thank you.
women do that actually. So no problem. We can move next to our next speaker, Miss Misbah Mukhtar. She is a PhD candidate in Science, Technology, and Innovation Studies at University of Edinburgh, researcher on feminism and policy practitioner. She has also worked as a research associate at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, and I'll stop there. Ms. Mukhtar, floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay, cool. So I need to share my screen because I have a presentation and I will try to keep it short, like till 7 minutes or so, because I know we are running out of time and all that. So I need to share.
Thank you very much.
Is my screen shared with everyone?
No, not yet. We can't. We just see you. We can't see.
Host disabled. Can the host let me share screen? Whoever is handling the Zoom will have to make me a co-host so that I can share my screen.
You can do.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so now.
You are now able to.
Yeah. I think now you can see. Okay. Okay, so I will, I know like so many esteemed speakers have covered so many aspects of the conflict, so I would try to keep it very brief, and I'm also going to time myself. So essentially, first of all, there's a trigger warning in this presentation. Of course, there are no graphic content or nothing like that, but I will just be displaying the picture of one girl, Hind, who was executed during the Palestinian conflict. So there is just one picture that I have chosen, and I have been very deliberate not to take so many jarring or disturbing images of women and children, because essentially I find it very problematic that when we talk about women and children in conflict, we reduce them to the victims of it. But as some of Dr. Asma and Dr. Shazia has mentioned, that they are also the survivors of it. So it's very important that what kind of images and the connotations we are associating with those women and children. So so that thing first. So this is the girl Rajab Hind who was killed in Palestine. And when I was I asked to be a part of this panel, I was thinking that how only in December we had celebrated the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that occasion was taken as an opportunity to renew our pledge towards humanity by so many actors in the world. And today we are gathered here while there is an ongoing genocide in Palestine. And Palestine is not the only place where we are seeing there's so much conflict going on. As Dr. Asma mentioned, that in Kashmir, there have been 4 generations of people who have been witnessing such atrocities, which the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights itself called as barbarous acts that outrage the conscience of mankind. However, being an academic and a student of political science, it makes me think that when we talk about humanity, whose humanity is human enough to qualify that their rights and lives matter? And that's one question that I would like to leave all of you with. Against this background, in my presentation, I'll just essentially talk about like overall situation of women and children in conflicts, and particularly will focus on Palestine because Kashmir has been covered. And I will try to identify what, in my view, is the Palestinian issue a war against children per se. And then I will touch upon Kashmir as well. And then since I have a background in policy, so I will try to focus on the policy implementations or policy recommendations that we can have while going forward to incorporate some kind of remedy of the situation if there is any remedy possible. So when we talk about women and children, it's very important that we understand the vulnerabilities and the challenges that they face when they are exposed to conflict. So, for example, as Ms. Mary has covered, that sexual violence is a very big threat to the autonomy of women in conflicts per se. And then there is abuse, there is exploitation. And Dr. Shazia mentioned this, that there is a loss of, because in conflicts like Kashmir and Palestine as well, there is a lot of dependence upon male breadwinners. So one part of the conflict is that there is a loss of male breadwinners, there is loss of property, and there is a lot of displacement. And of course, it comes with like very exacerbating healthcare and reproductive conditions for women. And then when we talk about children, I think one point that is very important is about not about their socio-economic and political well-being of children in conflict, but also about the vulnerability of children to be recruited by armed groups when they are in conflict. So when children are being recruited either by force or by will, it's very problematic because they are not in a situation to have informed consent or to make decisions for their life. And later on in life, this becomes very problematic for them. And of course, there has other issues for children in conflict is about the displacement of their, like how they are being separated from their families. And then essentially it disrupts their access to education, healthcare, and so much more. So briefly, like I am sure all of you are aware about the situation. After 7th October, that the whole thing became very relevant, like whatever is happening in Palestine. But there was a very precarious situation in which women and children were living before 7th October as well. So there were so many international organizations, for example, Save the Children, that have given this massive report of how the psychosocial well-being of the children was at an alarming level in Palestine before 7th October as well. And there was a UN group that said that approximately 2.1 million Palestinians were needing some kind of humanitarian assistance. And this was before 7th October. And out of those 2.1 million, 49% people who needed humanitarian assistance were women. So it's very important to understand that when we entered this conflict in Palestine, the situation was already very precarious for women and children. And then 7th October happened, and there was a death of 30 Israeli children, which is tragic. But then it morphed into a war, and that war morphed into a genocide that we are seeing right now. So these are just some statistics that how, as of December 11, there were around 12,000 people killed in this conflict, 5,000 of them being women. But as of now, until 14th March in 2024, there were around 30,000 people killed, and 9,000 of them were women who were killed in Gaza. And there were 13,000 children who are killed amongst those 30,000. And there are so many women who are missing, half a million women are displaced. And then there is a very arbitrary kind of execution that is being done by Israeli forces. So they are killing women who are even holding white flags, which essentially are taken as a symbol of peace. So you can understand the complexity of the situation. And then the situation for like children, of course, it is even more worse because 17,000 children right now in Palestine are unaccompanied. 25,000 have lost one of their parents at least. So it's very important that we try to understand that why is there this whole dynamic, or there is this war that is going on against children, because children are like literally like the most innocent being on earth. But it is UNICEF that has called that Gaza is the graveyard of children, and this is a war against children. And why children? The important question is, so when we see that in order to wage a war against the whole population, you need to dehumanize them. And when we start to target children, you need to unchild them. You need to formulate a narrative which says that, oh, this child's life does not matter enough. Like it is not equal or important enough as the life of
we are running out of time. We are short of time.
Okay, sorry. So essentially, I was going to talk about this, and then my whole, like the crux of the thing that I wanted to talk about was, I was going to link all this situation with the situation of like how giving the right to self-determination is our only way forward in conflict situations like Palestine and Kashmir, because self-determination lies at the ambit of all this conflict, which allows...
Very rightly said. Right of self-determination is all what Kashmir needs. We'll move to next speaker, Ms. Aisha Rafiq. She's a dedicated scholar, currently pursuing a Bachelor's of Science degree at National Defense University, and she has a passion of writing and speaking as well. Let's hear from Ms. Aisha Rafiq.
Very deep.
Are you with us, Aisha? I think we don't have...
Aisha is there.
I can't
You can see her.
Okay, but I can't hear you, Aisha. We can't hear you.
Aisha, unmute yourself.
You are still muted, Aisha.
Aisha, talk to you.
You are muted.
Unmute your mic, Aisha. Yeah, done.
Speak.
Can we hear your voice now? If you speak.
She's gone. She's gone.
She's
Tran.
offline, so
Tran.
let us move to next speaker. Tran, she's a student of international. Have I pronounced it right? Name right? Student of international relations, and she'll be talking about the situation of women in Kashmir.
Oh, am I audible now? Is it working?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, is it working? Is my voice audible? So
Yes, it's
better?
audible.
Okay.
We can hear, and we will appreciate if very short and sweet presentation is
I'll
presented.
keep it short. Please do remind me of the time if it exceeds the limit.
I will for
And
sure.
yes, thank you. So I wanna start with the fact that as we're honoring the 55th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council, it is important to address these human rights violations against women and children. And our particular focus is on the region of Jammu and Kashmir. And violations have though existed in many areas, Kashmir is very significant in the fact that they have persisted and carried on for such a long period of time. And despite the fact that the international community recognizes the rights of women and children through various treaties and conventions, like the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or the Convention on the Rights of Child, CRC. But however, ratification alone isn't sufficient, because even with all this, women are severely degraded, abused, and put in a position where their rights and their basic needs are violated. And their basic requirement to this day and age, the women of India Indian occupied Kashmir have suffered occupation for such a long period of time that it is simply remarkable that there are women that have been born in the conflict, that have been raised in the conflict, that have been bred in the conflict. They do not even know what the world outside the conflict is. And that is remarkable in this day, time, and age, with all and everything that we have been given. And protection of women and child rights, it is not simply a moral imperative, but it is a legal obligation under international law. So the violations that India and the Indian authorities are committing in Indian occupied Kashmir, it is simply remarkable. I want to talk a bit about, please do remind me of the time, I'll keep it short. I want to talk a bit about the arbitrary detentions and torture that have been occurring in India, Kashmir. And many of the women are detained without any formal charges or due procedures and face harsh treatments in torture and in custody. So there are mass rapes, there are gang rapes, there are abuse, there are torture, there's mental torture, there's physical violence, and reports by human rights organizations highlighted instances of these violences, and these are present on the official websites of the United Nations Human Rights and on official.
Sorry, Aisha, I have to interrupt you. We are running out of time, and we have one more speaker. We'll hear from you next time for sure. And let me introduce Trans again. Tran,
Sorry, was
Just
she
the 2
mentioned?
minutes.
Okay.
just give a overview of what you're about to say, and then we'll finish.
So good afternoon. So for decades, women in Kashmir have suffered not only indirectly by the separation from their brothers, son, and husband who have either been killed, abducted, or imprisoned, giving rise to a new subcategory among women called half widows, women living in the hope of knowing whether their husbands are alive or dead. But women of Kashmir have also directly borne the scar. So even though these cases have been documented by the international investigating agencies such as Human Rights Watch and Physicians for Human Rights, the majority of such cases continue to remain unreported because of the fear of occupational forces.
Thank you. Sorry, we are running out of time, and thank you to all the ladies and gentlemen who are here. And just last thing, that we Kashmiri women, we are writing, we are reading, we are shouting, we are protesting, we are victims, but we are survivors as well. Just do remember Kashmiris, do remember their sufferings, and Kashmiris are very loud and clear in their message. Just you need to open your ears and hear what they are saying. I thank you all.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Asma. So good to see you, and hi everyone who is there.
Assalamu alaikum. It is feeling is mutual. It is good to see you, such young, bright, coming stars of Pakistan's security studies.
Thank you. And good to see Aisha, Dr. Shazia, and
Where
Miss
you
Mary
are
as well.
based these days, Misbah?
I am in Edinburgh these days. at
Acha.
Scotland.
Get for higher education?
Yes, I am doing my PhD. I switched fields, so now I'm in science technology and innovation
Oh,
studies.
wow.
So yeah,
Great. Best of luck.
thank you.
Technology is really important. We have a whole team working on technology and warfare.
Yeah, and then the technology has a very important dynamic to the how internet is used in conflict zones and
It
all
is
that.
changing the whole paradigm of social fabric and everything related to that. Technology is a new challenge, like nukes.
Indeed. And so happy to see Miss Mary as well. I was not familiar with your work before, but it was very nice to listen to
Yeah,
your talk. And
Mary,
Aisha,
it
we
was
could not
pleasure
hear to
listening
you.
to
Sorry.
you.
Dr.
Yeah.
Asma, it's very good to see you as well, Miss and Mary. Dr. Asma, I remember meeting you in Kashmir when I came with Sir. It was actually such
Yeah.
such a remarkable
Yes, it was
experience.
really a pleasure to host all of you, and I'm glad to see you speaking at this forum and trying to pitch in your point of view and voice for
I try
this.
to
That is
write a lot about Kashmir and about women's rights because it's
then
such
right
a
for us as well, sis. We have an article series, strategic forecast. You can see our website, and Misbah,
oh,
you
okay.
can also write for us. It is
Okay.
Okay,
very
I actually will.
interesting.
Yes, we write very often on it, on human rights of
And
women.
that is only for young researchers and of course seasoned who so, but basically to promote writing skills and providing a platform to the upcoming young researchers. Mary,
Yes.
I never heard you earlier, but it was lovely listening to you today.
I'm sorry.
I never heard you earlier, my bad, but it was really a pleasure listening to
Oh,
you
thank
today.
you. Thank you. I'm a writer also. I write about women's rights,
All right.
anti-war, Palestine since the 67 war, and
Mm.
Kashmir. Kashmiri activists saw my writing on social media and they said, you need to study our struggle and write about it like you do about Palestine. And I said,
Mm.
yeah, I'm so busy, and I put them off. And then they kept persisting. You have to study what's going on with us. And so in 2015, I took several months to study it. And I thought, oh my God, this is like Palestine. This is very similar. I mean, I was shocked. And once you get what's going on in Kashmir, you become committed to it. So I'm really thrilled to listen to you women. I hope that you will give Altaf Hussein where I can read your writings. Like I would love to read what you write in your
Yeah,
blog
I will
stuff.
take your contact and my institute will get in touch with you. I will take your contact from Altaf Hussain, and then
Yes.
our institute would like to invite you as a speaker, and we will get in touch with you.
Okay.
We are
Yes,
we are the only think tank on strategic issues located in whole Jammu and Kashmir region, including Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, because because of this protracted conflict, the Kashmiris were never been provided an opportunity to of a think tank to critical thinking and to raise their voice and to become the face of their of this conflict. So we are the only one located here. So I would like to invite you over as well. We would like I want my researchers to take benefit from your research findings and perspective on Kashmir conflict.
Yes, I would love to. I'm thrilled to meet you all. Really.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think it's time to call it a day because here
Yeah.
we are already 7 past 10. So
Okay.
try
And I have to
and
go and open my fast. But it was very
Chabhi
nice
Roni
meeting all
aao.
of you.
We just opened our fast few hours back, and this is the most testing, challenging time to speak and make your brain attentive after opening fast. Because the whole
Dr.
day we
Asma
were
was
suffering
drinking
from,
tea. It was
yeah,
very encouraging. I was like, okay.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Because if I miss this tea, then I have to only take it in sari.
Yes, yes.
So I thought that, but my brain was almost frozen before Aftari, and after Aftari it was worsened. But
I
thank
assume
God,
all of you are on LinkedIn, so I'll just like add you if you're on
yeah,
LinkedIn,
get
right?
in touch with us
Professor.
on LinkedIn.
Okay, cool.
That would be cool.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
take care. Good
Take care.
day.
It was
Happy
nice to meet
Iftar.
all of you.
Yes.
Bye.
See you, inshallah.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye, Dr.
Bye.
Fazia, everyone.